So welcome to the today's session, and today it is the last session of SB201 block number 28. And today I'm going to talk to you about the string security and definitely remaining topics we will try to cover. In the today's case, I will actually try to cover first of all how to use database to store the authentication detail. Thereafter, actually, I will talk to you about the concept of role-based authentication. So it will be good to once show you what exactly we are going to discuss. First thing that actually we are going to discuss is actually using database to store the details of the user. This is the first thing that actually we are going to cover. Thereafter, we will talk about authorities and rules. And after discussing about the authorities and rules, then we will talk about the customization of authentication provider, or you can say that customized authentication provider. Customized authentication provider. After having a discussion about the customized authentication provider, then we will talk about the course. After the course, actually, I will discuss to you about one thing that is called the JWT authentication, that is JSON Web Token authentication. And for the discussion of the JSON Web authentication, we will talk about what is the disadvantage of plain basic authentication, or what is the disadvantages of mainly the username password based authentication, or you can say that session based authentication, not username password. Basically, it will be good to talk about actually session based authentication. There is one more topic available. That topic is actually called the CSRF, that is cross-site request forgery. Some of the part, definitely, because this is a long content, in a single day it is not possible to cover, and we are actually not having any buffer day now, neither PSC. Yesterday I requested all of you to come into the class after reading the content properly. I hope that those who are sincere, at least they have done this thing. What is the impact of that? You will easily understand in this session. So please be careful. Okay. So first thing actually that I'm going to do, what exactly we have done so far. If I'm talking about the content of the day number 13, that was actually shared to you. Have you downloaded the updated file? Have you downloaded the updated file? Please make sure to download the updated file, because this is extremely important. This file is actually foundation of the Spring Security. If you did not understand this class properly, or if you have not gone through the content of this file, then definitely today's class and the further classes are going to be, you can say that, a bumpy ride for you. So first of all, everyone, in the Spring Security yesterday when we were talking to you, so actually mainly the discussion was all about how exactly the authentication is being performed. So whenever we are talking about the authentication, then definitely multiple types of authentication is available. If I'm talking about the case of the web browser, then definitely in case of the web browser, we are having discussion about the authentication that is actually referred as the session-based authentication. And definitely one thing, you know it very well, whenever we wanted to identify a user uniquely, then definitely to identify a user uniquely, we have to talk about the combination of username and password. If I'm talking about the username, then definitely username is required to be unique. If we are talking about the password, then the password is required to be a strong password. So these are the things. First question, that how to identify a user uniquely. So whenever we are talking about identify a user uniquely, then definitely we have to talk about the username and password. When you are actually making login on the browser, then to make login on the browser, first of all, a form is available in front of you. In that form, you have to enter the username, then you have to enter the password. After entering the username and password, then actually when you are hitting the submit button, then definitely first of all that username password detail is submitted to the authentication manager. So when I'm talking about the session based authentication, then in case of session based authentication, if you remember, so definitely the thing is that first user has to fill the data. User has to fill the data in form. So when actually user is filling the data in the form, so definitely based on the form data, an object of username, password, authentication, filter class is created. Once an object of username, password, authentication, filter class is created, then definitely the object of username, password, authentication, filter class, or you can say that the object of username, password, authentication, filter class is used to contain the object of username, password, authentication class. Actually, it will create an object of, you can say that username, password, authentication token. It is going to create an object of username password authentication token. Once the object of username password authentication token is created, so definitely we can say that's the object of the username password authentication token. It is actually containing what? It is actually containing the username and password. And if we are talking about the username password authentication token class, then definitely this is a subclass of the authentication interface, or this is an implementing class of the authentication interface. Now what exactly happened? This time actually new person will come into the role. Name of this new person is going to be the authentication manager. So definitely an object of authentication manager will be created. An object of authentication manager will be created. If I'm talking about the authentication manager, then definitely it is an interface. And if I'm talking about the implementing class, the name of the implementing class is actually referred as the private provider manager. If you wanted to create a provider manager, then definitely first of all, object of authentication provider will be created. Now what will happen? Objects of authentication provider will be created. Objects of authentication provider will be created. And if I'm talking about the authentication provider, then definitely if I'm talking about the default authentication provider, then the default authentication provider is DAO authentication provider. Remember everyone? If I'm talking about the default authentication provider, then the default authentication provider is going to be DAO authentication provider. Now talking about the next part, that is all about the DAO authentication provider. Then you remember one thing, that actually DAO authentication provider uses actually the user detail services. It actually uses the user detail services to get the detail of the user, to get the details of the user on behalf of the username. Okay. And if I'm talking about the method, then definitely the name of the method available is called, that is load user by username, that is accepting the username as a parameter, and it is going to return you an object of the user detail. It is going to return an object of the user detail. So definitely the load user by username, the load user by username method is actually responsible for, the load user by username method actually. If I'm talking about the return type, then definitely the return type is going to be user detail. The user details load user by username method actually returns an object of user class, which actually implements user details interface. And definitely this object is actually, you can say that has all the details of the user. And if I'm talking about this user object, then definitely the user object is actually attached to another object of username password authentication token. It actually attached to another object of username password authentication token that is actually returned to the user. That is actually returned to the user. So see, this story is what exactly represented in case of the session-based authentication. Now, if I'm talking about the next authentication, then I'm talking about the postman. In case of postman, definitely we do not have to fill any form. This time we are not talking about exactly session-based authentication. Mainly, if I'm talking about this case, then in this case, we actually using the mechanism that is referred as the basic authentication. In case of basic authentication, definitely, first of all, you have to fill the username and password in the form. In form that is actually available under the tab. That is available under the tab that is called authorization. User has to fill the data in form under the tab authorization, that has under the form authorization. And then actually what will happen? A new header will be generated that actually contains the base 64 encoded username and password. That actually contain base 64 encoded username and password. Then definitely again what will happen? This time actually based on the form data, an object of basic authentication filter class will be created. And when an object of basic authentication filter class is created, the further story is going to be 100% same. Is that point okay? That first of all actually authentication manager is required. For the authentication manager, again username password authentication token will be used. Then definitely authentication provider. From the authentication provider, by default actually DAO authentication provider will be used, and your DAO authentication provider will be responsible for all that login related procedure. So first of all, actually, let me show you how exactly internally the things are working. So internally, if I'm talking to you how exactly things are working, so far all the examples that we have covered, in every example so far we have used in memory authentication manager kind of things. Actually, we have used, you can say that all the user detail so far that we have created, they are actually available into the RAM only. Remember this thing? Yesterday we were talking about one class, that is in memory user detail manager class. So right now, so far, whatever discussion we have made, in that discussion, we know that all the user details are available actually only in the memory. No database is actually created so far. If you take a look at in-memory user detail manager class, then in the in-memory user detail manager class, can you see there is one map available such that the name of the map is called users. The users is a map that is used to contain all the user details. So for example, if I'm talking about the security configuration class, in the security configuration class, how many users I have created? Right now, I have created only one user. So definitely that only user will be stored into the map such that the string is going to be username and remaining data is going to be simple your user class object. So if you take a look at the constructor, then by looking at the constructor, can I say that I can add multiple users also? Yes or no? Can I say that I can add multiple users also? Answer is pretty logical. That answer is yes, we can actually add multiple users also. So can I say that if I'm talking about the in-memory user detail manager class, so in-memory user detail manager class is very much like a storage of the user objects that we can use for the login, logout, etc. purpose. First part is clear. First part is clear. And if I'm talking about this class, then this class is inheriting actually user detail manager class. The user detail manager class is actually inheriting the user detail service class. If I'm talking about the user detail service interface, the user detail service interface is having one method. The name of the method is referred as the load by username method. Again, I'm coming to in-memory detail manager class, and here if I'm talking about the load user by username method, can you see that implementation is available such that this implementation is getting the detail of the user on the behalf of username only. First point is clear. It is not matching any password. It is not matching any password. It is just actually getting the detail of the user on the behalf of the username. So don't you think that it looks very much clumsy that, sir, we are actually getting the detail only on the behalf of username? What about the password? Curious? Yes or no? How exactly password is matched internally? This is something that you should also know. Okay. Now again, coming back to the my point. So as I already told you that if I'm talking about the default authentication provider, then definitely the default authentication provider is going to be DAO authentication provider. So let me actually jump to the class, and name of the class that actually I'm writing is going to be the DAO authentication provider class. So if I'm talking about the DAO authentication provider class, then in the DAO authentication provider, there is one method available. The name of the method is actually referred as the retrieve user method. So if I'm talking about the retrieve user method, then the first parameter is the username. So username is nothing but actually you can say that simple. It is the username of the user, and the second object is going to be username password authentication token. So if I'm talking about the username, then can you see that in the retrieve user? Can you see that in the retrieve user using the object of the user detail service, first of all, actually on the behalf of username, user details will be loaded by the DAO authentication provider. Or simply, you can say one thing that when we were talking about the in-memory user detail manager class, then definitely the method that is load user by username class. This method is actually called by the DAO authentication provider object. Is that clear? The method that is load user by username. This is a method of the interface. What is the name of the interface? The name of the interface is called the user detail service interface. What is the definition? So definition is provided here. Who is going to call this method? DAO authentication provider is going to call this method. When DAO authentication provider is actually calling this method, again, it is getting data only on the behalf of username. It is actually again not talking about the password. Is that point okay? Again, it is not talking about the password. Again, mysterious. Okay, sir. If it is not talking about the password, then how exactly password is matching? So if I'm talking about how exactly the password is matching, then in this condition, You have to just go to its parent. If I'm talking about its parent, then who is the parent? The name of the parent is called abstract user detail authentication provider. If I'm talking about the abstract user detail authentication provider, so first thing, what method recently I talked to you? I talked to you about the method such that the name of the method is referred as the retrieve user. Let me copy this, come here, Control F, Control V, hitting enter. So if I'm talking about the retrieve user method, what kind of method it is? What kind of method it is in the superclass? Hello, good morning. Take a look. Some keyword is highlighted already. It is an abstract method. So definitely being as a subclass of abstract user detail authentication provider class, can I say it is responsibility of DAO authentication provider to provide the definition compulsorily? Yes, it is. Definitely. So actually retrieve user is an abstract class such that retrieve user is an abstract method of abstract user detail authentication provider class. But this method is actually providing you only the user detail. But if I'm talking about the remaining part, that how to match the password, then definitely for the sake of matching the password, there is one more method available. The name of the method is actually referred as the additional authentication check method. What kind of method it is? What kind of method it is? Additional authentication check. Again, it is an abstract method. So if it is again an abstract method, then definitely being as a subclass, it is responsibility of the DAO authentication provider to create object to provide the definition. When it is providing the definition, so see everyone, the first parameter is the user detail. So if I'm talking about the first parameter is the user detail, then can I say that it is going to be the object of the user class that we have fetched on the behalf of username? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Second thing is available, that is called username password authentication token. Here you can say that first of all, it is trying to get the credential. If the credential is not available, then directly it is going to provide the message that is failed to authenticate since no credential provided. This is what actually debug message is. But if I'm talking about exactly message, then did you remember this message multiple times? Whenever we are entering incorrect username password, then in case of web form, we are ultimately ended up with the bad credentials message. Okay, let's say that if the credential is present, then can you see that first of all, the credential, that is the password, it is converted into the string. The password is converted into the string. Okay, then can you see that it is matching the password also? It is actually matching the password also. So this authentication object actually contains the password that is entered by the user. If I'm talking about the user detail, it contains the actual password, that is original password of the user. Both passwords are matched. If the passwords are matched, then there is no problem. Everything is happy. If the password is not matching, then definitely, ultimately, we are again going to end up with the message, and the message is going to be bad credentials. So internally, can I say that DAO authentication provider actually uses the two methods? The one method that is called the retrieve user method, and the other method is available whose name is called the additional authentication checks method. Is that clear? That's nice. Now, if I'm talking about the DAO authentication provider class, who is the parent class of DAO authentication provider class? The parent class of DAO authentication provider class is called the abstract user detail authentication provider class. And if I'm talking about the abstract user detail authentication provider class, can you see that it is implementing an interface such that the name of the interface is called the authentication provider? Answer is yes. And if I'm talking about the authentication provider, what method is available in the authentication provider? Authenticate method. Remember, we had discussion about this method for multiple times. Yes, it is. Okay, so if I'm talking about the authenticate method, is that available? Let me come to the abstract class, and after coming to the abstract class, I am having the discussion about the authenticate method. When I'm having the discussion about the authenticate method, then can you see one thing? First of all, it is actually determining user name. Means it is checking if the username is available or not. First of all, it is checking if the username is available or not. Let's say that the username is available. Now what exactly it is doing? It is checking if the username is available into the cache memory. If it is available, then well and good. If it is not available, then can you see that it is calling the retrieve user method to get the user detail object? Yes or no? The authenticate method is actually calling the retrieve user method. When the authenticate method is calling the retrieve user method, then definitely, if user object is available, then definitely in this condition, do not execute the catch block, just come out. After coming out, can you see that it is performing one, it is calling one method. The name of the method is called the additional authentication check method. It is calling one method. The name of the method is actually called the additional authentication checks method. And additional authenticate checks is the same method that is actually used to check the password of the user. Is that okay? How exactly authenticate method is using the two methods internally. One method that is called the retrieve user method, and another method that is actually called the additional authentication checks method. If both the things are successful in this condition, everyone, finally, can you see that the user object is converted into the object? Superclass reference variable can point to the child class object. And thereafter a method is called such that the name of the method is called the create successful authentication method. In the create successful authentication method, you can say that a new object of username password authentication token class is created that is containing principal object, that is the user object. Apart from the user object, it is containing credential. Apart from that, whatever authority it is having, everything is available here. So when you started authentication, then at that time an object of username password authentication token is used to carry whatever you have entered. Once everything is validated, then after the validation, a new object of username password authentication class is created that is containing the detail of the logged in user. So both time when we are actually making the login and once the login is successful, in both the cases object of username password authentication token class is used, but both are different object. First time the object is containing the data that user has entered, and second time when login is successful, then it is containing the data that is actually belongs to the user. This part is clear? Everyone, this part is clear? Yes. So can I say that if I'm talking about the authentication provider, then authentication provider is following a very flexible architecture. Because if I'm talking about the authentication provider, then definitely authentication provider is actually containing a simple method. The name of the method is called authenticate method. Then there is one class available. The name of the class is called abstract user detail class. And if I'm talking about the abstract user detail class, and if I'm talking about its implementation, then one of the implementation is available that is called DAO authentication provider implementation. So this is the beauty of the using the interfaces, that multiple implementations can be created. Right now we are talking about DAO authentication provider. If you wanted to create your own authentication provider, then definitely you can create your own authentication provider also. Is that point okay? You can create your own authentication provider also. Nobody is going to stop you. So these are the three methods I have discussed to you. Now DAO authentication provider is the default authentication provider. I am happy with that. I don't have any objection. But now what is my demand? I wanted to create an application such that in that application, I wanted to create a customer. The customer is having email, customer is having password, customer is having name, customer is having address, and it is having, let's say, customer ID. 5 attributes are available about a customer. I wanted to use customer as a user, and I wanted to use database to store the details. Getting my point? What I want to do? Excited how to do that? Yes, it is. So simple logic. I don't have to jump into DAO authentication provider. I am already happy with the DAO authentication provider. If I'm already happy with the DAO authentication provider, so if you remember recent flow, then in the recent flow, I told you one thing, that the DAO authentication provider is actually using the user detail services. Yes or no? The DAO authentication provider actually using the user detail services. And if I'm talking about the user detail services, then there is one method available that is called load user by username method. What exactly it is going to return? It is going to return me an object of user detail interface, which is practically an object of the user class so far. So practically, can you say that I have to make changes only at the last two steps? Can I say that I have to make changes only at the last two steps? Yes, that is the only thing that I have to do. So shall I proceed for an example? Yes, it is. Okay, that's nice. So everyone, I'm going to create an application. So all that story, why I told you, because you should be very much comfortable that what exactly need to be customized. Unnecessary, do not go for here and there. And the Spring Security structure is well defined, go with that. So first of all, everyone, I wanted to create a new project. I'm going to create a new Spring Boot starter project. When I'm creating a new Spring Boot starter project, so possibly this is the one of the last project. So example number 29, and we are talking about the security using JPA. Security, SICURITI, with JPA. So if I'm talking about the security with JPA example, rest of the details is as it is. Let the explanation be as it is. The dependency that I wanted to add is, because I need database, so definitely MySQL driver I need, definitely data JPA I need, definitely Spring Web I need, definitely dev tool dependency is what I need. Apart from that, if you wanted to add the project Lombok dependency, you can add the project Lombok dependency also. Spring security dependency I will add later. Spring security dependency I will add later, because right now this is not required, but definitely we will add not in the first phase, but in the second phase. So right now I am available into the dependency number 20, example number 29. If I open the pom.xml file, then in case of the pom.xml file, you can see what dependencies are directly added here. The first dependency is available, that is called the data JPA dependency. Second is available web dependency. Third is called dev tool dependency. Fourth is available MySQL connector dependency. And finally, one more dependency is available, that is called the test dependency. Let these dependencies be available as it is. So first of all, I am available here. The first is available, that is com.masai school. So first of all, it will be a good idea to create an entity. So directly I wanted to create a class, and name of the package that actually I am going to create is com.masaischool.entity. Into the com.masaischool.entity, I wanted to create one entity. Name of the entity is called customer entity. So if I'm going to create the customer entity, then definitely the very first thing that I need to write down is the entity annotation. After writing the entity annotation, one thing that I'm going to use is private string. Into the private string, the thing that actually I wanted to write down is going to be the email. Thereafter, the next thing that I wanted to write down is going to be the password. Next thing that I wanted to have is going to be, let's say that the private string. Let's say this is simple customer name. Apart from that, I wanted to have one more thing that is called the private string. And this time I'm writing the next thing that is actually referred as the address. And definitely, because this is an entity class, so definitely ID, that is the primary key, is required. For the primary key, if I'm talking about the generation strategy, then definitely I have to use generated value. Into the generated value, I have to use the strategy. And for the strategy, I have to write down that the value is going to be generation type dot identity. So then actually I'm writing here one thing that is going to be private integer. Let me write down the name that is called simple ID. So first thing everybody, can I say that this is going to be auto increment? Yes or no? Yes, it is. Second thing that I'm saying is, if I'm talking about the email column, then for the email column, one thing that I wanted to have is, if I'm talking about the unique, yes, it is required to be unique. If I'm talking about the nullable, then definitely it is required to be false. Null is not allowed. Why exactly null is not allowed? Because I wanted to. Because I want to use email as user name. Is that point okay? I want to use email as username. That's why I am making it. Then everybody, if I'm talking about the next property, it says that the next property is password. So if I'm talking about the password, then definitely it is going to be a string value. But what is my demand? When I'm registering a new customer, so at the time of registering a new customer, I wanted to write the password in the database. Perfectly okay. But when I am reading the user detail, will it be safe to read the password and put it into the user object? Definitely not. Never keep password in memory, because once user object is, let's say, getting stolen by any mean, then your password can be compromised, which is a risky job. So Jason says, don't worry, I am having a better thing for you. So for example, let's say there is one annotation available. The name of the annotation is called JSON property annotation. Into the JSON property annotation, there is one thing available. There is one thing available that is called access. And if I'm talking about the access value of the access, then the value of the access that we can write down is going to be write only. The value is going to be write only. So we are writing access dot write only is what exactly we are writing. If you wanted to write down in the lengthy form, then definitely you can write down JSON property dot access dot write only also. What exactly the impact of this is? The impact is that password will be written from Java object to, from, you can say that JSON object to Java conversion, or password will be written from JSON object to Java object. But but when user detail is actually read from database, then when user detail is read from the database, then password will not be actually converted from Java object to JSON object. So simple, we can say that during the read operation, your password will be skipped, i.e. during, or you can say that for the read operation, password will be skipped. Is that okay? What is the mean of this property is? Yes. So this is what actually one annotation that actually I have used. It will be good to put the comment at the top. So password will be written from JSON object to Java object, but when user detail is read from database, then password will not be converted from Java object to JSON object, i.e. for the read operation, password will be skipped. Is that okay? Password will be skipped. That is what actually use of the JSON property annotation. For the name, for the address, whatever detail you wanted to have, you can have. So right now, definitely the username and password both are available to me. Let me copy this and username and password. These details I am putting on the top. Thereafter, ID is working as a primary key. Then name and address, these things are also available. So because this is an entity class, so definitely being as an entity class, it is compulsory to have a default constructor. Yes or no? Because it's an entity class, so it is compulsory to have a default constructor. Answer is yes. It has to be serializable. Answer is yes. All the variables are required to be private. Answer is yes. And why it is serializable? Because if I'm talking about at the rate entity annotation, then definitely the at the rate entity annotation automatically makes the thing serializable. Always keep this thing into your mind. Whenever a class is annotated with at the rate entity annotation, means it is serializable by default. Now let me come to the next part. So I wanted to generate the parameterized constructor also. For generating the parameterized constructor, definitely ID is not required. With the remaining details I can manage. Now I wanted to go for the getter setter method. So getter setter methods are available and I wanted to generate the getter setter method for each and every field. ToString method, if you wanted to have, you can. If you do not wanted to have, then there is no problem. So it's up to you that whether you wanted to have it or not. So for example, everyone, let's say that I'm available here. And when I'm available here for a while, let's say that I'm skipping the toString method. Later on, if it is required, then I will use. So into this entity class, there is nothing special. The only new thing that is available for you is the JSON property annotation. Using the JSON property annotation, we can define the access level. Means this property is available for the writing operation, but this property is not available for the reading operation. Make sense? Yes or no? Clear, everybody? Shall I proceed further? Okay, so customer.java, one entity class is created, and definitely because we wanted to define the database related configuration. So to define the database related configuration, we have to talk about the application.properties file. The properties that we have to write down is spring.datasource. The very first thing that we have to specify is the URL. After the URL, what we have to specify? Definitely we have to specify the driver class name. After specifying the driver class name, what I have to specify? The thing that I have to specify is the username. After username, the only thing that I have to specify is the password. Apart from that, if I'm talking about the additional property, then definitely into the additional property, we have to talk about the show SQL. And there is one more property available that is called the DDL.auto. For the DDL.auto, we have to write down DDL-auto. Value for the DDL.auto is going to be update. For the show SQL, we have to write down the value true. In my case, username is going to be root, password is going to be root. If I'm talking about the driver class name, then this is going to be com.mysql.cj.driver.com.mysql.cj.jdbc driver class, and URL is going to be jdbc colon mysql colon double slash. Thereafter, this is going to be localhost slash name of the database. So normally I used to keep the name of the database same as the name of the project. So if I'm talking about the name of the database same as the name of the project, so here actually database name is available for us. Let me copy this database name. Then I'm coming here, and after coming here, I wanted to create a new database. So I'm writing a thing that is called the create database. Then I'm writing database name. Is that point okay, everyone? One database is created here. I'm using the same database also. 3306 is the optional port number. If you are writing, then it is okay. If you are not writing, it is not going to make any difference because 3306 is the default port number. So detail is spring.datasource.url, spring.datasource.driver class name, username, password, show SQL, and spring.jpa.ddl hibernate. Can I convert the same properties file to the YAML? Yes or no? Yes, it is simple. I have to do the right click, and after doing the right click, then actually I have to do the following conversion. Just actually I'm checking the detail. Yes, everything is okay. So just do the right click. After doing the right click, there is directly option available, convert dot properties to YAML. And this is definitely a better decision. Why? Because YAML is actually kind of cross language format, because properties file is actually only specific to Java programming. Then everyone talking about the next portion. Entity class is created. We have created the application.yaml. Thereafter, everyone, I'm actually wanted to create the repository. If I wanted to create the repository, so first of all, I wanted to define a new interface. And where exactly I wanted to define the interface? I wanted to define the interface into the repository package. Into the repository package, the name is going to be the customer repository. The name is going to be the customer repository. So can I say that customer repository is going to be the subinterface of the JP repository? Yes or no? And into this the JP repository, if I'm talking about the entity type is going to be customer. And if I'm talking about the ID type, then definitely ID type is going to be integer. Clear it is? Entity type is going to be customer, but ID type is going to be integer. This is the next thing that actually we are going to do. Then everyone, I'm talking about the next part. So while having the discussion about the next part, customer entity is imported, let it be imported. This time, I wanted to actually get the user detail by the email. If I wanted to get the user detail by the email, so you remember that there is directly one method available. The name of the method is called the find by ID method, such that ID here refer to the primary key column. Similarly, if I wanted to define my own method, then to define my own method, can I use find by email? And when I'm using the find by email, then definitely string email is the parameter that I have to pass. If I'm talking about the return type, then definitely return type is going to be a customer entity. But this customer entity, I wanted to get written in the terms of optional. Is that okay? Please take a look. Definitely implementation will be automatically generated by Spring Data JPA. I am not liable to create the implementation. Do I need to use @ repository annotation? Do I need to use repository annotation? Okay. So this is something that is optional. Okay, one part is I have already created. Then I'm talking about the next part. Now I wanted to create the service layer also. And definitely to create the service layer also, I'm pressing Control and talking about the package. While talking about the package, then I'm writing here com.mysql. Thereafter, I'm creating the next package. The name of the package is called the service package. Into the service package, name of the interface that actually I wanted to create is going to be the customer service interface. So when I'm creating the customer service interface, so initially I'm talking to you about only registering the customer. Initially, I'm talking to you only about registering the customer. So how to register the customer? So for example, let's say I'm going to create one method such that the return type of this method is again going to be customer. And then I'm talking about the method such that the name of the method is going to be the register customer method. When I'm talking about the register customer method, so what parameter exactly do I need? The parameter that actually I need to use is the customer parameter is what actually required. The only one method that is I have created here. Now I wanted to write down the implementing class. So pressing Control N, I wanted to create a class. The name of the class is going to be the customer service IMPL class. This customer service IMPL class is going to implement the interface such that the name of the interface is actually called the customer service IMPL. So first of all, everyone, into the customer service IMPL, do I need the object of the repository? Do I need object of the customer repository? Answer is yes. Do I need to use the service annotation? Answer is again yes. Answer is again yes. So now the point is available here, everyone. I wanted to create an object of the customer repository. So definitely I am writing here that is private customer repository. Then again, I am writing here the thing that is called the customer repository. And after writing the customer repository, I need to use the auto wiring. There are two options available for the auto wiring, that you can use field auto wiring, which I never recommend. Second option is available that you can generate a parameterized constructor, which is the recommended approach. Keep this question always in your mind. Actually, field injection is not recommended. It is slow also. It is not according to the concept of object-oriented programming, because ultimately behind the scene, reflection API is there that is doing the job, and it is actually accessing private variable of your class somewhere else. which is not allowed. That's why it is the best practice to go for the constructor injection. Second option is available, that is called setter injection. If none of them is suitable for you, then finally you can go for the field injection. Is that okay? And now it's time. Actually, you can see that there is only single parameterized constructor available. If there is only single parameterized constructor available, then actually use of auto wired is again optional. If you are using, then well and good. If you are not using, then it doesn't make any difference. Then it doesn't make any difference. One scholar is asking a doubt, and the doubt is, sir, what will happen if we don't create constructor? Instead of that, we use auto wire annotation. Reason I already told you. See, field injection is the worst type of injection. Why it is worst type of injection? Because see, this variable is of private type. Question number one, can I access a private variable outside the class? No. If I cannot access a private variable outside the class, the same rule is applicable for the Spring also. Then how exactly Spring will be able to determine the type, and how exactly Spring will be able to inject the dependency object? This is a big question. Yes or no? Yes, it is. Now listen. The statement that private variable of a class cannot be accessed outside is a false statement. Since the J111, since the day number 1, we are telling you that in Java programming, you cannot access the private variable outside. That was true at that time because of your scope. Now, when you are talking about the Spring container, then actually we are available at the very much advanced level. And into the core Java, there is one package available that is called java.lang.reflect package, reflection package, reflect package. Into this reflect package, there is an API available. That API actually allow you to do diagnosis of any class, any interface, any package, anything. And this API is having the so much power that it can even access the private variable of a class outside also. This API is not recommended for general programmer. This API is only recommended when you are going to perform some framework development or when you are going for some system software designing development. Is that part okay? This is very much like a risky tool that is not intended to be used by a general developer. But there is a way. Now, Spring Container is by default using that reflection API to access the private variable if you are using the field injection. So if you are actually making access of a private variable outside the class, don't you think that it is breach of the encapsulation? Yes, it is. It is breach of the encapsulation. So Spring Container is actually breaching the encapsulation whenever it is going for the field injection. Never, never, never use this method until unless there is no other option available. Second thing, whenever actually we are talking about the field injection, so definitely field injection is comparatively slower than the constructor injection. In case of the constructor injection, constructor is public. If something public that is, if I'm talking about something that is public, can I say that it is accessible globally? Yes, it is. So definitely it can actually access the type of parameter also. Based on the type of parameter, dependency can be injected. So if you are using the constructor injection or the setter injection, then there is no breach of encapsulation. But if you are using field injections, and then Spring Container is internally breaching the encapsulation, which is not a recommended practice. Second thing, it is actually slow also. If I'm talking about the field injection, so field injection is a slow injection. It is going to affect your performance. Third number point, if I'm talking about the customer repository, can I say that customer repository is a mandatory dependency for me in case of service layer? So whenever there is any mandatory dependency available, then go for the constructor injection. Because without customer repository object, this service layer is completely useless. Make sense? So these are the reasons. That's why field injection is actually not recommended. Sometimes even I am also using, but this is not a recommended practice because I'm actually on the job of 10 plus year experience profile. If I'm making such kind of mistake, then they are not acceptable. But at the fresher level, if you are people doing that, then nobody is going to bother you. But if you follow the right convention since the day one, then definitely it is going to benefit you in the long run. Rest is your decision. So coming back to the point. So auto wiring annotation is what actually I am using, that is completely optional. Thereafter, I am writing public customer service IMPL, then definitely customer repository is what exactly I am using. So if I'm talking about the register customer, then in the register customer, nothing special I have to do. Just using the customer repository, I have to call the save method. Into this save method, I have to pass the object of customer. Clear or not? Is that okay? That's good. So Simple. Service layer is I have created. Apart from the service layer, repository layer I have created. Apart from the repository layer, now it is a good time that we should go for the controller layer. Okay, everyone. This is actually complete revision of the Spring Data JPA also for you. And why exactly this example specifically I am covering? Because in the next evaluation, your evaluation paper will be from Spring Data JPA to the Spring Security. Complete package will be there into your paper. So this revision is going to help you a lot. That is what my opinion is. Now everyone, I wanted to create the controller class. So to create the controller class, again, I wanted to create one more class. The name of the class that actually I'm going to write down is going to be the customer controller class. Then I'm writing the thing that is called the com.masai school dot name of the package that actually I'm writing is the controller package. So customer controller is something that actually I'm going to create. Clicking on the finish, thereafter one controller is created. The very first thing is everyone, I wanted to annotate it with the REST controller. When I wanted to annotate with the REST controller, then definitely I wanted to register a customer. If I wanted to register a customer, what kind of mapping is required? What kind of mapping is required? What request method is beneficial whenever I wanted to create a resource? Definitely post mapping. Definitely post mapping. So I'm using one annotation. The name of the annotation is actually called the post mapping annotation. And definitely the URL pattern I'm going to follow according to the convention. So I'm writing customers. And here I'm writing public. Definitely this is going to provide us a response entity. Into the response entity, the object is going to be of the customer class. The name of the method that actually I'm writing is the register customer. And definitely using the request body annotation, I can take the object of customer also. I can take the object of the customer also. Is that point okay? Using the request body annotation, I am taking. Now, actually, what is required here? Again, if I wanted to work on the controller, then I need an object of the service layer. And to get the object of the service layer, then definitely, again, I am writing that is private customer service. Into the private customer service, again, I am writing the thing that is called the customer service. If I'm writing the customer service, then I wanted to go for the generate constructor using the field. When I'm talking about generate constructor using the field, it is generated. This time again, auto wiring is not required. At the rate auto wire annotation is, you can say that kind of optional annotation. So this time when the object of customer service is available for us, then what actually I need to do? I'm going to get the object of the customer. So I'm writing customer equal to customer service dot register customer. This is what actually I'm writing. And after writing this part, what I need to do? Let me use the name cust. Then I need to create an object of response entity. When I'm creating the object of the response entity, then the first thing I'm writing is the customer object. Next thing I wanted to return is the HTTP status, and the value that I need to return is going to be created. Is that point okay, everyone? How actually I have created the request method? HTTP status, not status code. Yeah. So this is one method that actually I have created. This is a plain string data JPA application. So far, I have not used Spring Security. So far, I have not used Spring Security. Now everyone, talking about the next part, can I run this application? Answer is yes, we can run this application. So first of all, actually, I'm going to this application main, everything is okay. Let us run this application. If any error will be there, we will take care. Pressing Alt Shift XB and enlarging the log. So there is something that actually went wrong as expected on my side. It is saying that I'm not able to create the bean name data source initializer. So into the property file, I have made some mistake. It is writing com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. D should be in the capital letter. D should be in the capital letter. So let me write down the D into the capital letter. Thereafter, let me run this application again. Alt Shift XB is again what I'm typing. Again, there is problem available. This time, what exactly it is saying? It is saying that error in creating the bean data source, and this time again, let me come forward. Class not found exception com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver is the class that is not available. Why this dot is there? Why this dot is there? So let me run this application again. Alt Shift X B is what I'm typing. Hopefully this time it should be successful. So logging. This time everything looks okay. And yeah, there is one table that is created. The name of the table is called the customer table. And you can see that alter table statement is also working there. Now I'm writing here, I'm available on the database, writing show tables. One table is available. The name of the table is called the Customer table. If you wanted to see the structure of the customer table, then definitely ID is a primary key. For the address, nothing. Email is unique plus null is not allowed. Name is available there. Password is also available there. Can I register a customer? Yes, I can register a customer. If I wanted to register a customer, then what thing actually I need to do? The very first thing that I need to do is I have to go to the customer controller. After going to the, I have to first of all go to the postman. I am available in the postman. The request method I have to use is the post method. The URL that I need to hit is the customer URL. Is there any login required? Definitely no, because I have not used the Spring Security. I have to the body part, and after going to the body part, now I am available here. After being available here, what information I have to set? So I'm coming to the entity class, and after coming to the entity class, 4 information total is required. The first information that I'm sending is going to be, let's say, name. The second information that I wanted to send is, let's say, we are writing here, that is called the email. So let me create the 4 combinations of that 1, 2, 3, and 4 combinations I have created here. Name is there. After the name, we are talking about the email. After the email, I am talking about the next thing, that is called the password. And after password, I am writing the next thing that is referred as the address. If I'm talking about the value of the name, then the value of the name, let's say that I'm writing is ABC. Email ID that I'm writing is abc@gmail.com. abc@gmail.com. Password, let's say that I'm writing is ABCD into the capital letter. And if I'm talking about the address, then let's say that address I'm writing is going to be Bangalore. This is what exactly I'm writing. Then everyone, whatever be the response, let us click on the send button. Once I'm clicking on the send button, then can you see email is available, name is available, address is available as it is. Password is not available. In place of password, ID is available. Yes or no? In case of password, ID is available. And why exactly password is not available? Simple reason. Because into the entity class, I have used the annotation that is called @JSON property annotation. Into the JSON property annotation, we are writing access equal to JSON property dot access dot write only. Make sense? First example is clear, everyone? That's nice. So right now, actually, first of all, I am able to register the customer. Let me write down on the database. I am writing here select star from what is the name of the table. The name of the table is actually called the customer table, hitting semicolon. This time, actually, you can see one thing, that all the details are saved successfully, but the source of problem is that if I am talking about the password, storing the password in the plain text format, is it recommended? Definitely not, because now your developer can make login to any account and he can do anything. Yes or no? Or in any case, let's say if your database is getting stolen, then definitely almost everything is getting stolen. Now anybody can make any changes into your application, which is not okay. And you know that data breach law are actually very strict, not in India, but in the outside. Companies has to pay a fine of millions of dollars if their data is got breached. So this time, what is the solution? The solution is that, everyone, I wanted to store the password in the encrypted format. Is that okay? So that even if my database is getting stolen, nobody will be able to actually get my password. How to do that job? Now this time, here actually comes the role of the Spring Security. So Spring Security actually says us the one thing, that, see, if you wanted to store the password in the secure manner, then to secure the password into the secure manner, there are multiple approaches available. If I'm talking about the multiple approaches, then the one approach is available, that is using the encoding. Recently, when we were talking about the basic authentication filter with you, then during the basic authentication filter, we have used the base 64 encoding to encode the username and password. If you are using the encoding, then the problem with the encoding is that anybody can decode it very, very easily. So actually encoding the password is one of the way to make it unreadable, but it is not secure, because hardly some 20 to 30 encoding schemes are available and anybody can decode that. And if somebody try 30 times a password, if anyone is hitting, then this is not a miracle. This is not a miracle. So encoding is not a very good job. Yes or no? This is the first thing. If I'm talking about the second option available, then the second option is available, that is called encryption. In case of the encryption, your password is going to be converted into the encrypted format that is completely unreadable. It is a long sequence. And some algorithm says that decryption is possible. Some algorithm says that decryption is not possible. So definitely encryption is definitely a good approach. Encryption is definitely a good approach. And if I'm talking about multiple encryption algorithms are available, among the multiple available encryption algorithms, we are going to use bcrypt password encryption scheme. which is actually a very solid scheme that is provided by the Spring Security. Third mechanism is also available. The third mechanism is actually referred as the hashing mechanism. And the hashing mechanism says that using the password, we will generate a hash value such that the generated hash value is going to be unique for every password. So next time when the user is going to enter the password, we will again compute the hash value, and based on the hash value, computation will be done. Using the password, hash value can be generated, but using the hash value, password cannot be generated. This is what actually the concept of hashing is saying. But among the all three combinations, encryption is something that I like most. So I'm going to take example of encryption algorithm for the password encoding. Is that clear? Encoding is the worst option, hashing is the second option, and if I'm talking about the best option, then the best option is to use the encoder, is to use the encryption. For the encryption, Spring Security by default actually provides the support for me. So now it is a good time that I should add the Spring Security as a dependency. So this time I am opening the pom.xml file. After opening the pom.xml file, now I wanted to add the Spring Security as the dependency. If I wanted to add the Spring Security as the dependency, then what exactly I have to do is I have to write down Spring Boot starter. Then the dependency that actually I wanted to write down is the security dependency is what I am adding. Let me refresh my project. Once actually I am stopping my project. After stopping my project, let me refresh my project by pressing Alt plus F5. And force update is what exactly I am going to use. Thereafter, updation is successful. Let me come to ambient repository. Into the ambient repository, if I'm talking about the Spring Security. So Spring Security dependencies are added here. And you can see that when the Spring Security dependency is added here, then one more dependency is available here. The name of the dependency is called Spring Security Crypto Dependency. This dependency is actually responsible for encryption and decryption. This is mainly responsible for encryption and decryption. So you can see that when I'm adding Spring Boot Starter Security dependency, lot of dependencies are actually added automatically. So Spring Core dependency is here, config is there, web dependency is there, and additional dependencies are also available there. Let them be available as it is in case of security dependency. Moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. Then actually this time once I have added the Spring Security dependency, can I say that my post request is going to be login protected now? This time, can I say that the URL that is /customer for the post, it is going to be login protected? Yes or no? It is going to be login protected. Yes or no? Yes, it is. If it is login protected, then definitely I have to write down the configuration file. Remember, yesterday I told you that how to exempt a URL from getting login. From login safe, your how to make a login, how to make a URL, you can say that login agnostic means no matter whether the person is logged in or not logged in, that URL is actually available for access. For this thing, everyone, I wanted to create one more class. The name of the class, let's say that I'm writing is app-config class. You can give any name, no problem. Into the app-config class, name of the package I'm writing is going to be com.masaischool. Name of the package that I'm writing is the config package. Name of the package that actually I am writing is the config package. So into the config package, is there an interface required? Answer is no. So if you remember, yesterday I talked to you about two annotations. One of the annotation that I talked to you was the configuration annotation, and another annotation that I talked to you was the enable web security annotation. Then I have to create a method such that the method has to be annotated with @bean, because I wanted to create the bean, but I want the bean to be managed by the Spring container. Return type of the method is going to be security filter chain. Return type of the method is going to be security filter chain. Method name can be any. And if I'm talking about the parameter, then the parameter is going to be of the HTTP security. And definitely it is going to throw an exception because it is going to throw an exception. So I'm writing here EXCEPTION. This is one method that actually I have created. Then first thing, everyone, if I'm talking about the HTTP, then into the HTTP, there is one method available. The name of the method is referred as the authorized HTTP request method. Into the authorized HTTP request method, what I need to pass? I need to pass the implementation of the customizer. To pass the implementation of the customizer, I have to pass here one thing that is called AUTH. I need to pass one method that is called AUTH. What exactly this AUTH is? This AUTH is an object of the, did you remember the class? Request matcher registry kind of class name yesterday I told you. actually. Okay, let me write down the implementation. While writing the implementation, I am writing or dot. What exactly I need to call the method? I need to call the request matcher method. When I'm calling the request matcher method, then the first thing that actually I'm passing is the http request dot post method. http request http method dot post request for what URL? For the slash customers URL. This URL is something that you have to permit for all. Then if I'm talking about the any other request, then any other request is required to be an authenticated request. Remember everyone, yesterday I did this job. Yesterday I did this job. That's nice. Thereafter, if you remember, because this is a post request, so definitely for the post request, I need to do one thing, that actually I have to use the CSRF, and if I'm talking about the CSRF, then actually one object is available C, and definitely then we have to call the C.disabled. Thereafter, actually I have to call one more method. The name of the method is actually called the form login method, and into the form login method also I have to pass, that is customizer dot with default fixed configuration. No matter if I'm going to write down the same thing for the 10 times, all the 10 times I will actually use the same thing. Thereafter, one more method that I need to call is, the method is going to be, that is HTTP basic. Into the HTTP basic also I need to write down customizer dot with default. Finally, I need to write down return HTTP dot build is what exactly I need to write down. Is that clear, everyone? So this is one method that actually I have created for you. So yeah, now this is better. So can I say that this time I have exempted the post URL from the login? This time I have actually exempted the post URL from the login. Answer is yes. So actually without even making login, one can easily access that URL. Shall we do one experiment? Means shall we cross check if it is working or not? Yes, it is. That's good. So once actually I am pressing Alt Shift X B, so it is running in the form of a Spring Boot application. When it is running in the form of a Spring Boot application, so seems everything is working nice. And this time actually it has generated the default username and password also. Yes, it is. Let it be generated. That is not a big deal, because I wanted to just check whether I am able to access the URL without making login or not. I am available on the Postman. On the Postman, again, this URL is available. Then I am talking, this is going to be the BCD. After talking about the BCD, then this is going to be bcd@gmail.com. Password I am keeping same, and let's say this time the location that actually I am writing is Jaipur. Clicking on the send button. When I am clicking on the send button, so this time 201 created status is available for me. I have not made any login. So can I say that my configuration is working fine? Can I say that my configuration is working fine? 100% okay. There is no problem. Okay. So configuration is okay. I have exempted the post request from the URL. Now what is my next thing is available? Next thing is that everyone, I wanted to actually configure the password encoder. As I have already told you that password encoder is something that is already provided by the Spring Security. So this time I'm going to create one more method. This method is to encode the is for the password encoder. So if I'm writing about the password encoder, so I'm talking about @bean annotation again. Thereafter, I'm writing public. If I'm talking about the return type, then the return type is going to be password encoder. Name of the method that actually I'm writing is going to be get password encoder. Return type of the method that I'm writing, name of the method is get password encoder. And here I'm writing return new. There is one class available. The name of the class is called bcrypt password encoder class. The name of the class is called bcrypt password encoder class. What exactly this bcrypt password encoder class is actually doing? So you can directly refer to the documentation also. Into this documentation, service interface for encoding the password. The preferred implementation is bcrypt password encoder. The preferred implementation is bcrypt password encoder. So right now, everyone, can I say that automatically an object of bcrypt password encoder will be created and it will be registered to the Spring container. The name of the object is going to be get password encoder. Yes or no? When your configuration class is going to be loaded, then at the time of loading the configuration class, definitely first of all this class is going to be executed. When this class is actually getting loaded, automatically one object of supply filter chain will be registered with the Spring container. Another object of password encoder will be registered with the Spring container. Then actually it will start registering the controller, then the service, then the repository. So actually into your you can say that Spring container multiple objects are available. Now actually I wanted to use this password encoder object. If I wanted to use this password encoder object such that this object is automatically available to the Spring container, can I again use the concept of auto wiring to get this object into the service layer or at the controller layer? Simple question I am asking you. Your application started. When your application is started, so definitely automatically, first of all, let me explain you again. If I'm talking about this annotation, Spring Boot application annotation, did you remember this annotation is combination of three annotations? The one annotation that is called configuration annotation, second is called component scan annotation, third is called enable auto configuration annotation. When component scan annotation is working, so definitely it is actually using com.masai-school as the base package. When it is using com.masai-school as the base package, so definitely it is going to scan the packages one by one. Yes or no? When the Spring container is going to scan the packages one by one, so definitely first of all it is coming to the config package. When it is coming to the config package, then it is actually scanning the app config class. On the app config class, what exactly annotation is available? Configuration annotation is available. Because configuration annotation is available, so it is a Spring Bean. So can I say that first object of this class will be created by the Spring container? First object of this class will be created by the Spring container. Yes or no? When the object of this class is getting created, then automatically it is finding that two methods are actually there, those who are annotated with @bean annotation. So definitely these methods will be called automatically by the Spring container. When the first method is called, then an object of Spring security is an object of security filter chain will be registered with the Spring container. When the next method is called, an object of password encoder will be registered with the Spring container. Yes or no? Yes, it is. Okay. So right now, can I say that when the first package is getting scanned, then actually three objects are available to the Spring container. First object is available of the app config class. Second object is available of the security filter chain class. Third object is available that is of the password encoder class. Yes or no? Now, what is my target? My target is that before storing the password into the database, I wanted to encrypt the password. Yes or no? Before storing the password, I wanted to encrypt the password. Now actually it is coming to the next package. What is the next package? The next package is controller. This package is going to be scanned. When this package is going to be scanned, then definitely it is going to create the object of the customer controller. To create the object of the customer controller, first of all, it is going to create the object of customer service. To create the object of the customer service, it is going to create the object of the customer repository. Is that clear? Practically, first the object of customer repository will be created, then the object of customer service will be created, then the object of controller will be created. Is that point okay? That's nice. If I'm talking about this customer class, will Spring create object of this customer class? Will Spring create object of this customer class? Answer is 100% no. Is it a bean class? Answer is no. Is it annotated with stereotype annotation? Answer is no. Has I created object of this class using a method that is annotated with bean annotation? Answer is no. So keep in mind, this is not a Spring Bean class. Actually, as a programmer, we are completely responsible for creating the object of customer class. We are responsible to manage each and everything. Is that okay? What is the concept of Spring Bean is, and how stereotype annotation and @bean annotation is registering the object to the container. Clear or not? It is okay. Now I wanted to actually encrypt the password. If I wanted to encrypt the password, then actually I'm coming to the controller class. When I'm coming to the controller class, everyone, then I can do a very simple job. Here actually I'm going to create an reference variable of the password encoder class. When I'm creating the reference variable of the password encoder class, do the Spring container having object for this dependency? Yes or no? Yes, it is. If it is available, everyone, then I can actually again use the constructor injection. If I'm using the constructor injection this time, everyone, then so this time it is actually my responsibility to write down that this dot password encoder equal to password encoder. And this time, because this is a two parameterized constructor, that's why use of @auto-wire annotation is compulsory. Is that okay? Only for a single parameter constructor, auto-wire annotation is not compulsory, but for multi-parameter constructor, you have to use auto-wire annotation. Is that point okay? So now actually password encoder is already available to me. When password encoder is available to me, so I'm going to write down code 2. Encrypt the password, code 2, encrypt the password before code 2, encrypt the password before saving. So first of all, everyone, if I'm talking about the password, then the password object is already available in the customer object in the plain text format. Yes or no? Yes, it is. What I need to do, I need to encrypt this password. So how to encrypt this password? To encrypt this password, what I need to do, I need to use password encoder. Can you see there is one method available that is called the encode method? Encode the raw password. Generally, a good encoding algorithm uses SHA-1 or greater hash combined with add 8 byte. Whatever it is, let it be, because we are already using the bcrypt algorithm. So what exactly the thing I am doing is, the very first thing that actually I am doing is going to be password encoder dot encode. And definitely this is going to give me the encrypted password. Once the encrypted password is actually available to me, then we are writing here customer dot calling the set password method. And this time, can you see that before saving into the database, the password is getting encrypted? Yes or no? Before saving into the database, actually the password is getting encrypted. So this is one job that actually I have done. So now I have added the Spring Security dependency. Answer is yes. When I was writing the app config class, then using the app config class, what actually I did, the thing that I did is, everyone, I have actually allowed the post URL, the post method that is having the URL slash customer to bypass the login, directly it can be accessed. Second, actually, I have configured a password encoder here, and this password encoder is what exactly I am directly using into the customer controller class. So can you see, this is the beauty of auto wire annotation. Things are automatically ready-made available, and we can directly use them with the least hassle. And you can use any type of algorithm. If you wanted to use the bcrypt algorithm, you can. If you wanted to use any other algorithm, that you can. So you can see that if I'm talking about the password encoder, can you see that password encoder is just an interface that is containing practically two methods. One method is to encode and second method is to matching. Second method is for matching. It is containing just actually two methods. Then actually, everybody, one more thing that actually you should take care is, if I'm talking about its implementing classes, how many implementing classes are available? Can I say a lot? Can I say that a lot classes are available? So actually any of the class that actually you wanted to use, you can use any class according to your choice. This is what the beauty of auto wiring. This is what the beauty of loosely coupled system. Any dependency can be replaced by any other dependency at any point of time. Dynamically, any dependency can be added, any dependency can be removed. Is that point okay? So whatever concept that we have taught in the Spring Core, all these concepts are already used by the Spring Security. And actually every concept that we have already studied in the Spring Core, they are automatically used by all the additional frameworks. So now, why exactly the concept of interface, abstract class, inheritance, polymorphism, exception handling, they are vital in the J8111. I hope now you are understanding. Because without these concepts in the Spring Security, it is completely devastating for anyone. So multiple different systems are available, but not going to discuss so much into the detail. Password encoder is done. So shall we try to run this application and let us check if the password encoder is working properly or not. Going to next part. Alt Shift X B. Let me run this application again. Everything is 100% okay. Right now, actually, it is using by default user detail services. Let it use, no problem. Let it use, no problem. Thereafter, everyone, I'm talking about the next part. So while coming to the next part, again, post request is there, slash customer is there. So we are writing the next part that is going to be CDE. Thereafter, we are writing that is called the CDE. Password is going to be ABCD. Address is going to be, let's say this time I'm writing the address that is of Mumbai and clicking on send button. So when I'm clicking on the send button, a user is registered. Answer is yes. Let us come to the Mr. Database. And after coming to the Mr. Database, take a look at the third user. Anybody brave here who can remember this password? Anyone brave here who can remember this password? Answer is no. Answer is no. And look at the beauty again. I have saved the user. The password of the user is simple ABCD. I wanted to store the new user. For this new user, for example, let's say I'm writing DEF, mail ID is also going to be DEF, password is going to be ABCD, and let's say that if I'm talking about the city, so city, for example, let's say I'm writing it is Chandigarh. This time again I'm going to save. See, password is same. Clicking on the send button, detail is saved. Again coming to the database, again firing the query for the same password. Is it generating same encrypted text or it is generating different encrypted text? Second choice, it is generating the different encrypted text. So even for the same password, it is generating the different encrypted text. So it is virtually impossible to recover the password even when the database is available in front of you. So normally it happens that whenever we are talking about the sensitive information, so sensitive informations are often kept into the encrypted format. So let's say that by mistake, even if the database is getting stolen by the hackers, then it is not going to be very much useful for them. Clear, everyone? Even we can keep the email also in the encrypted format. Even we can keep the mobile number also in the encrypted format. All these things are always required. Shall I proceed further? Actually, there is one more question from the scholar side. Actually, some people are misinterpreting. So let me actually clarify the things to you. The very first thing that actually I wanted to clarify is everyone. One scholar is writing a doubt that is reasonable at the initial stage. The scholar is thinking that because the combination of username and password is unique, that's why we are getting the different hash code. Answer is no. Answer is no. Actually, the thing is that whenever it is encrypting the password, so at the time of encrypting the password, normally the encryption algorithms are using the concept of timestamp. That timestamp actually shows the current point of time and it is having accuracy up to nanoseconds. At the time of performing the encryption, it is actually using timestamp as one of the component. Because the timestamp is used as one of the component, that's why even if you are using the same password for the 10 times, then definitely at the same timestamp, you cannot use the same password for the 10 times. It is accurate up to nanoseconds. Due to that difference of the nanoseconds, for the same password, the generated encrypted text is going to be different. Clear it is? This is one general implementation I told you. For every algorithm, it can be different. For every algorithm, it can be different. And many algorithm actually exist. For them, decryption algorithm doesn't exist. For them, decryption algorithm doesn't exist. Or if you are going to decrypt the text, then actually processing time can be in the terms of tens of years. Yes, that is the beauty of encryption algorithms. For some encryption algorithm, decryption algorithm doesn't exist, or the algorithm that exists, they are going to take years of time to decrypt a text. Anybody having that level of patience? That your computer is going to run for years to decrypt a simple text. And let's say that company is saying that in every 6 months, user has to change the password. Now, okay, that's why banking systems are so smart. They are actually asking user to change the password every 6 months or 1 year. That's why they are saying this thing that let's say if something is stolen, still actually there is no logic of decrypting the text. It is going to take so long, and multi-level security is also available. Do you aware about the term multi-factor authentication, MFA? Simple logic, whenever we are making login on the banking email like SBI, first you have to enter your username password. After entering your username password, what you have to do? You have to actually enter the OTP. So two-level authentication is there. This is what actually referred as the multi-factor authentication. So let's say that if hacker is able to compromise at a single level, then at a second level, it will be very, very difficult to do compromisation. Then if I'm talking about the transaction, for the transaction, SBI is providing the different password. So what exactly they are doing? They are talking about the multi-factor authentication. You have to enter the transaction password also. You have to enter the OTP also. So as the layer of security increases, definitely for the hackers, it is going to be very, very difficult. I am not using the term impossible because nothing is safe on the web 100%. It is all about the probability and the awareness of the user. Clear, everyone? Nothing is safe. It's all about actually awareness of the user, awareness of the developer, and definitely, you can say that why nothing is safe? Because it's a battle between the developer and the hackers. It is actually a kind of battle between the developer and the hackers. And it's you can say that common truth that doing a crime is a very laborious job. and it requires a lot of patience. And in case of being a hacker, it requires a lot of knowledge also. Then actually somebody will be able to crack the system. That's why hackers are actually considered as one of the best developers. They are actually considered as one of the best developers. If let's say that somebody is able to do a data leak, so you know it very well that against the data leak, one can easily charge ransom amount in the terms of millions of dollars, and companies are paying. There is no option for the companies. I think, have you listened about Cambridge Analytica case? Somewhat like that term was there. I am missing. It was Cambridge Analytica. The Cambridge Analytica was actually Panama paper leak case. Lot of celebrities were involved in that. Even the, you can say that nation head Amitabh Bachchan, Sachin Tendulkar, multiple names was there in that case. So what exactly they were doing? They are actually stealing the confidential by mean of hacking. And after stealing the information, now they are threatening. I will leak this information if you are not going to pay that much amount of money. Companies are almost forced. They are not having any option other than just to pay the money. Multiple time it happens. This is not a big case, because if they are leaking the data, somebody actually reaches to the court, then definitely public reputation is going to be down, valuation of the company is going to be down. Additionally, company has to go for the legal suite, and they have to pay compensation to the users also. So that's why instead of going into that long processing, the easier option is to pay the ransom and close the matter. Well, coming back to the discussion, it is going in some different direction. So everyone, how to use the Spring Security, how to use the password encoder, is that part clear for you? Now I'm going to move to the next part. I hope that you are enjoying the class. Yes or no? After a very long time period, we are having some implementation in the Spring Security. Okay. So that part is something that actually I have done. So now actually finally I'm coming to the phase where I wanted to use my customer as a user. So far, as you can see that when I run this application, so during the running this application, it is actually creating a default user. So can I say that right now still actually it is using the default user class? Yes or no? Right now still it is actually using the default user class, which is not a good habit. So just actually remember the steps. What exactly the step is available? First of all, I have to create a class that is going to implement the user detail service interface. Yes or no? I have to create a class that is going to implement the user detail service interface. In that class, I have to override the definition of load by username method. Yes or no? In that class, I have to provide the definition of load user by username method. And if I'm talking about the load by username method, then definitely it is going to fetch the customer detail on the behalf of email. Yes or no? It is going to fetch the detail of the username or user on the behalf of email. Answer is yes. Once it is fetching the detail of the user on the behalf of email, so ultimately we are going to get the customer object. But what actually I have to return? I have to return the object of the user detail. So what exactly I am going to do? I'm going to create another class that will implement the user detail. In the user detail, I will keep the object of customer. How exactly the things I am going to do, that thing I will demonstrate in front of you, but I think it's a good time to go for a break. Yes or no? Okay, everyone, relax. I will come back, then show you that how exactly this thing is going to work. What exactly I need to do now? Well, first of all, welcome back after the break. Right now, actually, I wanted to use my customer as a user. So first thing, the DAO authentication provider that recently I was discussing to you. The DAO authentication provider actually uses the user detail services to get the detail of the user on the behalf of the username. The DAO authentication provider actually uses user detail services to get the detail of the user on the behalf of username. So very first thing that actually I am going to do is I am going to create a new class in the service layer. The name of the class that actually I am writing is, for example, let's say it is customer detail service class. This customer detail service class is going to implement the interface. The name of the interface is going to be user detail service interface. This is going to use the user detail service interface. And you can see that when it is actually implementing the user detail service interface, then automatically there is definition available for load customer by username. First of all, everyone, actually I need to tell the Spring container that, hey, Spring Container, do not use whatever default user detail services that you were using so far. You are requested to use my own custom user detail services implementation. So how to tell this thing? Telling this thing is very, very easy. Can you say that I can directly use @service annotation here? So automatically during the component scanning, this customer detail service will be actually registered with the customer with the Spring Container. And if it is registered with the Spring Container, so the DAO authentication provider, it will use my user defined customer detail service as the implementation of user detail service. Is that point okay? That's nice. Thereafter, everyone, I need to provide the definition of load user by username. And definitely to provide the definition of the load user by username, I need object of the customer repository. So because I need object of the customer repository, so again, I am writing here that is private. Then writing here customer repository. And after writing the customer repository, then I'm writing here customer repository. After writing the customer repository here, then definitely I need to generate the parameterized constructor. So I'm writing all shift s. After writing the all shift s, then I'm writing generate using constructor. This is the one more part that actually we have done. And after doing this part, definitely use of @autovir annotation is not compulsory. If you wanted to use, then well and good. If you do not want it to use, then no problem, because it is a single parameterized constructor. Here, if I'm talking about using the customer repository, can I call the method? The name of the method is actually called the find by email method. Yes. And if I'm talking about the email, then practically email is nothing but it is just a user name. And if I'm talking about the return type, then definitely return type is going to be an optional object of customer. Return type is going to be an optional object of customer. Using this optional object of the customer, now I'm going to do the next thing. Can I use the if present method? Yes, answer is that I can use the if present method. Or can I use the method that is called the or else throw method? Yes, I can use the or else throw method also. When I'm using the or else throw method, then can you see that by default it is talking about the username not found exception? Can you see that by default it is talking about the username not found exception? One second. Hmm. So username not found exception is available there. So if I'm writing here a supplier, so while writing the supplier, actually definitely I can write down user not found exception, and here actually you can say that no customer is available with email. No customer is actually available with the email plus. And then actually let's say that I'm talking about the username. This is what actually exception I can throw. But if I'm talking about the return type, then definitely the return type is going to be the object of the customer. And definitely, can I return the object of customer here? Can I return the object of customer here? Answer is no, because the return type is supposed to be of the user detail. The return type is supposed to be of the user detail. What exactly user detail is? User detail is an interface. User detail is an interface. But is that customer entity class? Is it implementing the user detail interface? Answer is no. Getting my point? I am returning object of the entity such that entity class does not implement the user detail interface. That's why if I try to return the user detail, then I am in trouble. Can I create my own implementation of user detail? Answer is yes. Can I create my own implementation of the user detail? Answer is yes. So let's say that I wanted to create a class. This class I wanted to create in a package. The name of the package that I'm writing is com.masai school. The name of the package, it will be good to write down, is the model. The name of the class that actually I'm writing is, let's say that I'm writing name of the class is going to be customer details class. This is what exactly name of the class that I'm writing. And I want this class to implement the interface. The name of the interface is going to be user detail interface. Then I'm clicking on the finish method. Once actually I'm clicking on the finish, then actually customer detail is created. The customer detail is actually overriding all the methods. The customer detail is actually overriding all the methods that are available in the user detail interface. What method is available? One is available, that is called the get authority. So far we have no discussion about the authority, so let it return null, no problem. Let it return null, no problem. Okay. But if I'm talking about this customer detail, in this customer detail, can I actually create an object of the customer? Answer is yes, I can create the object of the customer. No problem. Can I actually create a parameterized constructor? Yes, I can generate a parameterized constructor also. So this time, Can I say that if I'm talking about the customer details class, so customer detail class is actually implementing the user detail class, but actually it is working as a wrapper for the customer entity class. Yes or no? It is actually working as a wrapper for the customer entity object that is working as a user. And because this class is implementing the user detail class, that's why, that's why, instead of returning the object of the customer, I can actually return an object of the customer detail class from here. Make sense, everyone? What I did? Please check. So two steps I did so far. The very first step that I did is everyone, first of all, I created a class. The name of the class is called the customer detail service class. This class is actually implementing the user detail service. Why actually I have created this class? Because if I'm talking about the DAO authentication provider, the DAO authentication provider is actually using the user detail service for the implementation. So I'm providing my own implementation of the user detail service. And because this is actually annotated with @service annotation, that's why definitely working on this is going to be very, very easy. This is the first point that I'm discussing with you. Then if I'm talking about the next part, into the next part, you can say that there is actually, I have to override the definition of load user by username. So definitely username is my email. I'm getting the object of the customer here. And if it is not available, then definitely I'm going to throw the exception. If the object is available, I cannot return the object of customer directly because customer is not implementing the user detail. So actually I have created one more class. The name of the class is called the customer detail class that actually implement the user detail. And actually in this class, I am creating the object of the customer. So definitely instead of returning the customer, I can return the object of the customer detail such that the object of the customer detail is already containing the customer. Is that point okay? How actually we have done the wrapping? Once we have done the wrapping, then definitely if you wanted to generate the getter setter method, it will be good to generate the getter setter method, because later on, if you wanted to access the customer object, then in this condition, it will actually help you. In this condition, actually, it will help you. Setter method is not required in this case. Definitely getter method alone is sufficient. Then everyone talking about the next part. If I'm talking about the password, then in case of the password, directly can I return the password of the customer? Yes or no? As a username, can I return the email? Yes, it is. If I'm talking about all date is method, all these methods whose return type is Boolean, for them, actually, you have to always use the return type true. For them, you always have to use the return type true because it is asking, is your account enabled? Definitely, we have to say yes. Otherwise, it is not going to allow us to make login. Is credential non-expired? Yes, credentials are non-expired means credentials are working. Is account non-logged? Answer is yes, account is not logged. Is your account non-expired? Yes, account is not expired. This is how exactly you have to answer. So how to create a class that actually implement the user detail interface and how to fit the entity object in the same. I hope this part is clear for everyone. Yes or no? Make sense, everyone? So simple point I have done so far. By using this, actually, I have told the DAO authentication manager that please use my object, and thereafter customer detail is working as a wrapper for the same. Okay, sir, all that is working. Now, how exactly we can check whether the person who is actually the logged in person? How to check who is the logged in person? So if you wanted to check that who is the logged in person, so can I create a URL that is login protected URL? And in this login protected URL, I wanted to print the detail of the user who is currently logged in. Will it give a proper verification? I am going to create a method that is login protected method. In this login protected method, I will print the detail of the logged in user. So if I will hit this method, then definitely first I have to make login. Answer is yes. And the detail will be printed who is the logged in user. So by looking at the detail, I will be easily able to cross check whether the user is the default user or the user is coming from the database. Yes or no? Now clear everyone how exactly we have designed this flow to verify that if our system is working properly or not. So this time everyone, I am talking about the next type of mapping, and definitely the next type of mapping is called the get mapping. Into the get mapping, I am writing here check logged in user, or let's say I'm writing check the logged user. So if I'm talking about the check logged in user, then in case of the check logged in user, again I'm writing public. Then after I'm talking about the response entity, and if I'm talking about the response entity, public response entity, into the response entity, then I'm writing here, let's say that get logged in customer, get logged in customer detail is what actually I'm writing. And here, no parameter is required to be passed. Get mapping is something that actually I'm taking. And if I wanted to get the detail of that user, then to get the detail of that user, did you remember that first I have to use the security context holder? Did you remember that first I have to use the security context holder? Then I have to use the get context. From the get context, I have to get the object of authentication. After getting the object of authentication, then actually I have to use, sorry, from the get authentication, I have to call the method that is called the, why exactly this is generating so much suggestions by yourself. Then I need to call the get principal method. So if I'm talking about the get principal method, this time actually the get principal is going to be object of this customer detail. This time get principal is going to be the object of this customer detail. So let me go for the first part. The very first part I am doing is everyone. I am talking about the customer details class. And when I am talking about the customer details class, so I am writing customer details cd equal to that one. Once actually the object of customer detail class is available to me, can I call the get customer method? Answer is yes, I can call the get customer method. When I'm calling the get customer method, then it is going to actually provide me customer object, and this customer object I can directly convert into the response entity. Clear everyone? This is what something that actually direct I can convert into the response entity. If you are actually wanted to get the Spring response, then definitely you can get the other response also. Oh, typing mistake again. Response entity. RESPONSEENTITY. Into the response entity, the first parameter that I have to pass is customer object. The second parameter that I have to pass is the HTTP status. And for this, I have to write down HTTP status dot OK. That is what actually complete flow we have designed. If you wanted to get the response in the form of a string, because I wanted to display the response in URL, so no problem, I can define that thing also for this thing. Yeah, done. Done. Shall I try once? Shall I try once on the browser? Let me come here and running this application. I'm writing Alt Shift X B. Alt Shift X B is what exactly I'm writing. Okay. Everything is started properly. Everything is started properly. So first of all, everyone, because I have restarted my application, so let me come to web browser. On the web browser, I am talking about again the port number 8080, and on the port number 8080, I am talking about URL I try to hit is check logged in user. If I hit that URL, I was redirected to the login page. So first thing, definitely this URL is login protected. URL is login protected. Now, let me hit the username. If I'm talking about the username, so can I use this username def@gmail.com? If I'm talking about the password, then the password is already fixed. It is ABCD into the capital letter. Password is ABCD into the capital letter. Let me check from the postman. Yes, ABCD is the password that I'm using. Let me click on the sign in button. When I clicked on the sign in button, can you see that I'm getting one object of customer here? Can you see that I'm getting object of customer here? Because it is customer, so can I say this time that actually default user object is not working as a user, but our customer object is actually working as a user? Yes or no? And if you wanted to get the response in a better manner, then definitely to get the response into the better manner, you should just do one job. Go to the customer class. And after going to the customer class, then you just need to override the toString method. So to override the toString method, I'm going to override the toString method only. Thereafter, I wanted to write down the custom implementation that is generated by Eclipse, Alt Shift X. So generate the toString method, and for all the fields you can, yet password is actually not required. Yet password is not required. See, this time why I'm not including the password? Because am I converting the Java object into the JSON at the time of returning the response? Just a minute, let me show you one thing. This time everyone, when I was talking about the controller, into the controller, am I returning the customer object or I am returning the string presentation? Option 1 or option 2? I am returning the customer object. Option number 1. Option number 2. I am returning the string presentation. I am returning the string presentation. So when I am returning the string presentation, so actually into the customer class, I have used one annotation. That annotation is called the JSON property annotation. That JSON property annotation will work only when the customer object is converted into the JSON. But this time, if I'm talking about my case, in this case, when actually the object is getting written, just a second, when I'm talking about the controller, then into the controller, you can see that this time we are not returning the customer object, but what exactly we are returning? We are returning the string presentation. So when we are returning the string presentation, so it is our responsibility to hide the password. Yes or no? This is another common misconception that, or another common mistake that we are making. This time I am returning in the term of string response. Okay, so let me do one more job, and I am hitting enter. It is asking me to make login. So for example, the username that actually I'm using is def@gmail.com. And after coming to def@gmail.com, writing the password ABCD, then clicking on sign in. And when I'm clicking on the sign in, so can you see that all the details are properly available? Yes or no? Yes, it is. And let's say that if instead of returning the string response, if you are actually returning the response of the customer object, if you are returning the object of the customer object. So while returning the object of the customer, you can actually find out that, just a second, save. Let the dev tool dependency start the application again. Whenever it is going to start the application again, the previous session is bye-bye. So this time I'm talking about the email ID, then talking about the password ABCD and clicking on the sign in button. So can you see that this time password is not available in the detail? Because JSON property dependency is working properly. Clear or not? Everybody clear or not? So this is one complete example that I have taken, that how to use actually a custom object for a Spring application, or how to use an entity object for a Spring application. Then everyone, if you wanted to perform the logout, etc., then definitely this is something that you can do very, very easily, no problem. If you wanted to try the same URL on the Postman, then definitely you can try the same URL on the Postman also. So let's say I am available on the Postman. What type of request we wanted to set? We wanted to send the request. The request is going to be the get request. Let me come to the REST controller. Into the REST controller, if I'm talking about the URL pattern, then the URL pattern is going to be, that is called the check logged in user pattern. Do I need to pass any information? Definitely in the get body, there is no information available. I'm going to the authorization header, talking about the basic authentication. Into the basic authentication, so the first thing that I need to write down is going to be the user name, or let's say that email. So if I'm talking about the email, then the email is going to be def@gmail.com. Password is going to be ABCD. Get request, URL is there. Basic authentication I am using. Clicking on the send button. And after clicking on the send button, if I'm jumping back on the Postman, am I getting the correct data? Am I getting the correct data? Answer is yes. So overall, the point is that everyone, our code is working perfectly. And this is actually telling you that how exactly the things are working. Now let me come to the next pointer. Now let me come to the next pointer. So if you are actually comfortable with this example, then you can assume that more than half of the Spring security is already done for you. At least 60-70% is comfortable today. Can I assume that 50-60% comfort is at least there? Definitely you have to write down the entire code. You might have to revise everything. Actually, teaching Splunk security in the last sprint is definitely a big job for me, because I have to apply a lot of energy. The total amount of energy I am applying in the first 3 sprint is equivalent to the total amount of energy that I'm applying in the last sprint. Okay, everyone. So first part, using the Spring Project Data JPA. This is a lengthy example. I have created a small one. Whatever you wanted to use, you can use. Whatever you wanted to use, you can use. Then everyone, I am talking about the next part. Sir, what exactly authentication is and what exactly the authorization is. So if I'm talking about the difference between the authentication and the authorization, so keep in mind, if it is authorization, so authorization is all about, if it is authentication, so authentication is all about who are you. Authentication is all about who are you, and authorization is all about what you can do. Authorization is all about what you can do. These are the two things that actually we have to take care. For example, let's say that if I'm talking about the bank, into the bank, if let's say that an employee is going there who is doing the biometric authentication, so can I say that this is a simple authentication because machine is only verifying that who are you? Yes or no? Attendance machines, they are just verifying who are you. There is no concept of roles. They are not interested that what is your capacity in that organization. No, just it is authentication, who are you. But for example, let's say buddy, that somebody wanted to access the sensitive area of the organization. The sensitive area may be data center, the sensitive area may be actually, you can say that a server room, so where actually nobody is actually allowed except for some people. So authorization actually says that what you can access or what exactly you can do. Authorization says that what exactly you can access or what exactly you can do. So authentication is who are you, authorization is actually what you can do. Based on this authentication, so if I'm talking about the authentication part, that is login part, can I say that this is not something we have already done? Can I say that this is a part that actually we have already done? So if I'm talking about the next part, that is actually referred as the authorization. If I'm talking about the next part, that is actually referred as the authorization part. So in case of the authorization part, actually I have to assign the role also, and I can assign the authority also. So first thing is that what is the difference between the role and the authority is. So for example, let's say that if I'm talking about the designation clerk, can I have n number of clerks? Answer is yes. If I'm talking about a designation manager, can I have n number of managers? Answer is yes. So actually a role define a common set of privileges that you wanted to assign to a set of users. Yes or no? Role actually refer to a set of privileges that actually you wanted to assign to a set of users. Role is not specific to an individual person. Role is something that is actually common for a set of people. Is that point okay? Only one scholar is responding. What happened? Not getting what I'm saying in the plain English? So role is all about only, just you can say, that set of privileges that actually a group of users are having. Now let me come to the next case. The next case is that, for example, everyone, if I'm talking about the bank, into the bank, actually, there is one role available, manager. Now let's say that a new scheme is introduced by government that you have to open, let's say that Mahila Samman account, etc. at your branch also. Only manager is authorized to customer. Only manager is authorized to open the account. So this time everybody, the one thing is that, let's say that actually this scheme is applicable only for the rural areas. So can we assign the privileges to the role? Let's say that there is a certain scheme available for the rural area in the banking system. Now, can we assign the privilege to the manager role such that manager is working in the rural area also, as well as manager is working in the urban areas also? Can we do that such that scheme is applicable only for the rural areas? Repeating my words again. We are having a bank. In the bank, let's say there are 1000 branches. For the 1000 branches, we are having 1000 managers. Out of 1000 branches, let's say that 500 are available in the rural area and 500 are available in the urban area. The situation is clear. The scenario, are you able to make into your mind? One bank, 1000 branches, 500 in the rural area, 500 in the urban area. Definitely for every branch, we are having a manager. Because for every branch, we are having a manager. So definitely 1000 managers are available there. Now let's say that government has launched a scheme that into the rural area, we have to open a special type of account in which balance can be zero. And this time, for such kind of account, manager's signature is required or manager is actually authorized to open such kind of account. So this time everybody, can I assign this privilege to all the managers such that the scheme is available only for the rural area? I cannot assign. So this time can I say that I have to provide the permission to the specific people such that this permission is going to be counted for individual account? Answer is yes. So whenever I am talking about a special permission for a individual person, then actually I have to talk about the concept of authority. Is that point clear? Role means a set of privileges that is common for a set of people. But if I'm talking about the authority, so authority allow you to specify the special privileges for the individual's account. Is that point okay? Authority allow you to create the things for the individual's account. This is what point actually I wanted to convey you. Then everyone, the next point is that how exactly authority and role are represented. So definitely one person is going to have one role, but it can have multiple authorities. Yes or no? One person is going to have one role, but it is going to have multiple authorities. Yes or no? Yes, it is. So whenever I'm talking about the role, so definitely to maintain the role, let's say if I'm talking about the customer class, into the customer class, if you just wanted to maintain the role, then to maintain the role, nothing special you have to do. The only thing that you have to do is you have to add a string variable. Yes or no? You just have to add a string variable. That is the only thing that you need to do. And when you are going to assign the value, then make sure that your value has to be prefixed with role underscore. So for example, if I wanted to assign the role clerk, then the value that I have to assign is going to be role underscore clerk. I have to assign the role manager, then actually the value is going to be role underscore manager. I have to assign the role customer, then it is going to be role underscore customer, because role underscore is a prefix that actually Spring Security is internally using to find out the difference between role and authority. Is that point okay? Here everyone. So this is what actually one thing is available that you have to maintain the role. Now actually see sir, for example, let's say that I wanted to allow some URL for a person who is having a specific role. How to do that? Did you remember HTTP security class? Did you remember a method that return the security filter chain such that the parameter of the method is going to be HTTP security? Did you remember app config class recently that I told to you? Into the app config class, we are having that. Yes, we are having that. So here, everybody, if you remember, then there is one method that I told you. Did you remember the method has role, has any role, has authority, has any authority? Into the authorize URL class. Into the authorize URL class. Authorize URL class. Authorize URL class, that one. Into the authorized URL class, there are method available such that the methods are available, that is has role, has any role, has authority, has any authority. So using this method based on the role, automatically filtration will take place. Clear or not? So integrating the role is actually very, very simple. So let me actually come to the documentation again. And while coming to the documentation, let me directly show you the app config file. Into this app config file, everyone, can you see this part? Authentication.request matcher. If I'm talking about the slash customer URL, this is permittable for all, no problem. But if I'm talking about the URL, that is slash customer and slash allow for the get request, they are allowed only for the customers whose role is admin. Is that point okay? Just actually one method I have to add. Just actually one method I have to add. If I'm talking about all other URLs who are starting with the slash customer, they are actually applicable for customer who are having the role user or admin. Is that point okay? Very simple it is, nothing special. That's why I'm covering directly from the notes. Remaining all the requests, definitely they are going to be authenticated. Remaining all the requests are required to be authenticated. No further changes there. Rest of the things are 100% same. Rest of the things are 100% same. You can see that the note that I told you, role underscore prefix only to be used when adding the role inside the database, i.e. while registering the customer with the role. We need to prefix those role with the prefix so that it can be stored inside the database with the role underscore. But when we configure the role inside our Spring Security application, we do it only by using the name. So at the time of saving, actually you have to do that operation. At the time of saving, actually you have to do that operation. So like actually I did the password encoding. Similarly, I can actually prepare with role underscore also. Yes or no? Like I have do the password encoding. Similarly, I can actually use the role underscore also. So this is what actually role-based authorization is. Next thing I told you is that actually what is the mean of authority? When I was talking to you about the authorities, then I told you that authority is specific to a person. Authority is actually specific to a person. So if I'm talking about the authority that is specific to a person, so here actually can you see that we have to maintain the list of authorities? Can you see that we have to maintain a list of authorities? Answer is yes. Actually, into the Spring Security, an authority is represented by an interface. The name of the interface is called the granted authority interface. How many methods are available? How many methods are available? Only one method is available. Look at the return type of this method. Can I say that like role was a string value, similarly authority is also going to be a string value? Like role is going to be a string value, similarly authority is also going to be a string value. If I'm talking about the implementing class, then one of the implementing class is available. The name of the class is referred as the simple granted authority class. So if I'm talking about the simple granted authority class, then in case of the simple granted authority class, can you see that while at the time of creating the object, I can specify the role also, or I can specify the authority also. Now coming to the code, can I say that we are creating the one-to-many relationship because one user can have many authorities? Simple Spring Data JPA association mapping. One user can have many authorities. And if you take a look at the authority class, so this time, this is a user-defined authority class. In the user-defined authority class, we are maintaining the authority ID also, we are maintaining the name also, and we are maintaining the customer also. So if I'm talking about the relationship, can I say that relationship between customer and authority is going to be one-to-many relationship? But the relationship from authority to customer is going to be many to one relationship. Yes or no? Yes, it is. And always keep this thing into the mind. If I'm talking about this authority is what I have created for my purpose. But actually, if I'm talking about the Spring, can I say that Spring is going to understand everything in the terms of granted authority? Spring is going to understand everything in the terms of granted authority, but for the sake of database management purpose, I have created an entity class that is called authority. So definitely the conversion of entity class authority to granted authority and conversion of granted authority to authority is something that actually we have to do ourselves. Clear or not? Conversion of granted authority to authority and authority to granted authority is something that actually we have to done at ourselves. That is what actually we have to do. So everyone, this time when we are going to actually save the authority, at the time of saving the authority, you can see that when we are registering the customer, so at the time of registering the customer, we are having customer detail. Apart from that, we are having list of user defined authorities. The list of user defined authority is first added to the customer, everyone, and thereafter we are calling the save method. Similarly, at the time of actually getting the data, we have to, when we are using load user by username, at the time of getting the data, can you see one thing that we are getting the user defined authorities and the user defined authorities are converted into the simple authorities and that simple authority is finally assigned to the user. Make sense? This is only additional thing that actually you have to take care. Then everyone rest of the things are going to be 100% okay for you. If you wanted to check for the authority, then check for the authority. There is method available. The name of the method is going to be view has any authority, and using the has on any authority, you can actually directly cross check. This is what actually referred as the role-based authentication system. So what was the main complication? The first main complication was how to use a user-defined object or an entity class as a user object that we have done. Once you have done this thing, then everybody maintaining actually authority and role is not a difficult task. Believe me, you follow these examples, it will be easily done for you. Clear it is? Will you be able to do that? Notes are already shared to you, don't worry. Okay, everyone. Then here actually comes one more role. One more thing is there. For example, everyone, let's say. Now I am in the next part. The next part is available. Assume the next situation. The next situation is available that let's say that bank has actually allotted new kiosk. Kiosk are actually small counters where actually some basic banking operations can be performed. Basic banking operations like withdrawal up to 10,000 rupees, deposit up to 10,000 rupees, such kind of things can be done there. So there is one more actually role available. The name of the role is referred as the, let's say that kiosk role. That role is working perfectly. Everything is working okay. And suddenly one scam arises or one scam comes into the light that one of the kiosk manager has done a fraud of, let's say, 10 lakh rupees. Now, isn't it better to disable all the kiosk owner from making login to prevent the further scam? There is one more role available. The role is actually referred as the kiosk role. The kiosk role is capable to perform some basic operation. It is actually doing some operation, but suddenly the situation comes into the light that multiple kiosk owners are making the fraud and they are actually taking out the money from the account of illiterate people without following proper banking procedure. This time, isn't it better to suspend the login of all the kiosk owners? Yes or no? Yes, it is. So in this condition, you have to provide your own authentication provider. Getting my point? In such condition, you have to provide your own authentication provider. Is that okay, everybody? And how to provide your own authentication provider? This is not a rocket science. Simple thing. To provide my own authentication provider, what I need to do? I need to provide the implementation of my authentication provider. Yes or no? I need to provide the authentication of my own authentication by authentication provider. Do I need to register it with the Spring container? Answer is yes. Thereafter, everyone, let's say that for a certain role, if you wanted to disable the login, then you can disable the login. Or let's say that you wanted to introduce multi-factor authentication, because by default, Spring is actually what it is doing. It is actually only doing authentication on the behalf of username and password. You wanted to add the OTP also. So if you wanted to add the OTP also, then in this condition, definitely, instead of using the DAO authentication provider, you have to use your own authentication provider. Clear it is? In case of multi-factor authentication, you have to use your own authentication provider. So definitely we are fetching the detail of the user. We are matching the password also. After matching the password, we are populating the authority, and then we are sending one OTP. After sending that OTP, user have to enter that OTP. And if this OTP is okay, then we will allow him to make login. This is the situation where actually you have to provide your own custom authentication provider. Clear or not? When to use the custom authentication provider? Because by default, whatever authentication mechanism that Spring is providing, they might not be sufficient for the practical purpose. You may have to add the multi-factor authentication. You may have to provide the biometric authentication. How you will do that? Then you have to perform the customization. And for the sake of customization, you must know what is the internal mechanism of Spring Security. Without that knowledge, you will not be able to work in the corporate houses, especially for the big projects. Proceeding further. Proceeding further, refer to this documentation, and due to this speed, I specifically told you, please come into the class after referring to documentation. Is that okay, everyone? Then everyone, next thing is available, that is called the course origin. Very simple. I request you to do it yourself because I am having very limited amount of time. CSRF, again, do it yourself. Simple one, not actually extremely important. But if I'm talking about now the extremely important thing, then the extremely important thing is available. That is actually referred as the token-based authentication. That is referred as the token-based authentication. See, why exactly token-based authentication become actually very, very important nowadays? One of the reason of the token-based authentication is the microservice architecture. One of the reason of the token-based authentication is the microservice architecture into the big applications. So if I'm talking about the microservice architecture, so microservice architecture, what it is, just simple, try to understand. If I'm talking about the Make My Trip, then on the Make My Trip, can you book the flight ticket? Answer is yes. Can you book the hotel? Answer is yes. Can you book the taxi? Answer is yes. Can you book a resort? Answer is yes. Can you book a train ticket? Answer is yes. Can you book a bus ticket? Answer is yes. So definitely Make My Trip is actually not the owner of any of them. So can I say that Make My Trip is an application that is using REST API to communicate with all them? Yes or no? Yes, it is. And actually the thing is that when I am making my account on the Make My Trip, then using my account, actually I can book any of the service. Yes or no? So definitely whatever account I have created on the Make My Trip, the detail of my account has to be shared with the IRCTC if I'm going for the ticket booking. Some detail have to be shared with the hotel owner. My detail has to be shared with the, you can say that flight ticket provider. My detail has to be shared with taxi services, etc. So this time, can I say that my detail is required to be propagated across multiple area in a secure way? Yes or no? And in this condition, everybody, for the sake of login purpose, if you are using session-based authentication system, then the session-based authentication system is not a good choice. Why session-based authentication is not a good choice? First of all, in the session-based authentication, practically there is no user data available. Practically there is no user data available. Second thing is that when your actually request is migrating from one server to another system, then actually managing the same cookie is actually slightly difficult. Second thing, chances of cookie stealing are also there. Chances of stealing are also there. To overcome all that things, actually there was no authentication mechanism was generated. This authentication mechanism is actually referred as the token-based authentication system. So simple logic, when you are actually talking about the B2C application, in case of B2C application, using the session-based authentication is okay. But if I'm talking about the B2B authentication, B2B application. In case of the B2B application, use of session-based authentication system is not recommended. It is slow, it is risky, it is not containing user data. Getting my point? What is the best solution available? The best solution is to use the tokens. So definitely, because the J session ID does not contain any user specific data. So if I'm talking about the tokens, yes, tokens are containing the user specific data. And if I'm talking about the tokens, so what is the structure of the token is? Can you see that whenever I'm talking about the JWT token, then in the JWT token, there are three parts available. The very first part is actually available as the header part. Second part is available as the payload part. And the third part is available that is called the signature part. If I'm talking about the first part, header part, then actually into the header part, you can see that all that information available is already into the encoded form. JWT header. Inside the JWT header, we store metadata info related to the token. If I choose to sign the token, then header name is going to contain the algorithm also. What information I am containing the algorithm? Second information is what type of token it is. All that information is first encoded using the base64 encoding scheme, and then that information is the first part of the JWT token. Is that point clear? The first part of the JWT token is going to be the header portion. Header portion is not available in the form of plain text. It is available in the form of base64 encoding. Sir, what this ALG header is, what exactly this type header is, again, I will say that please come back to official documentation. Into the official documentation, if I'm talking about the header, can you see that one header is available that is called type header? One more header is available that is called the CTY header. And additionally, if you wanted to add any other header, then definitely you can add, because header is nothing but it is just a concept of key value pair. Header is nothing but it is just actually a concept of key value pair. So one type of header, actually I have already told you what algorithm is used for signing and what type of token it is. Similarly, if I'm talking about the payload, then payload is actually containing the user data. Into the user data, what is subject, what is the name, what is the issue time is. So how exactly these fields are populated? Again, actually come to the official documentation. Into the official documentation, can you see that there are some JWT claims available? Into the JWT claims, actually we used to specify that who is the owner of the token. Into the owner of the token, ISS, it actually contains the name of the issuer. SUB actually contains the subject of the token. AUD actually contains who is the audience. EXP actually contains the expiration type. NBF is for not before. IAT for issued at. JTI is for JWT token ID. What is public name is that? What is private name is that? According to that standard, all information is configured. And once all information is configured, again, it will be encoded into the base64 encoded format. So can I say, like in case of basic authentication, there is a format available, Spring is just implementing. Similarly, in case of JWT, format is available, Spring is just implementing. Yes or no? Isn't it the same story? Yes, it is. If you wanted to actually sign your JWT token using your secret key, definitely you can sign your JWT token using secret key also. The best possible algorithm is available, that is called HMAC SHA 256 algorithm. Ready-made it is. And here actually you have to pass the URL, then you have to pass the payload, and then you have to pass the secret key that is actually used for signing the JWT token. So once the complete JWT token is created, so can I say that JWT token is containing the user specific data also? Yes or no? It is containing the user specific data. Yes or no? Second number point, this actually token is signed by the private key. Because this token is signed by the private key, so definitely nobody will be able to decode the information. Is that point also okay? Only server and only client, they will be able to decode the information. Rest of anybody is not able to decode the information. So once you have, see what is the mechanism now this time. Last time what was happening? We are providing the user ID password. On the behalf of the user ID password, one session ID was generated, and that session ID was shared with us in the form of cookie. This is what actually last time happening. Yes or no? This is what something that is actually last time happening. This time what will happen? We will provide the user ID password. After providing the user ID password, request will go to the server. The server is going to verify the user ID password. And after verifying the user ID password, instead of generating the session ID, the server is going to generate the JWT token for that user. one copy of that JWT token is, let's say, available to the server, and one copy is actually available to the user. Is that point okay? One copy is available to the user and one copy is available to the server. The content into the token can be read either by the user or by the server only. Why? Because this is already signed by the secret key of the user. If I am able to steal the token, still I will not be able to fetch that information. Still I will not be able to fetch that information. Now listen, if I'm talking about that JWT token, then that JWT token will go along with the headers like cookie was going. Very much like the cookie was going, in the same concept, actually the token will go to the server. Server will accept the token. It will actually decrypt the token. After decrypt the token, it will be able to identify, okay, that user is one who is demanding for the resource. Then definitely based on the roles and authorities, that resource will be provided to the person. Mechanism is clear? Mechanism is clear, everyone? Session-based authentication is not fit for the RESTful service. This is the main thing that actually I wanted to convey you. And one more thing that actually I wanted to convey you is, everyone, one more thing is available, that is called the REST architecture principle. Into the REST architecture principle, first thing is, it is for the client server architecture. Answer is yes. Can you see the second point? Can you see the second point? REST architecture is always considered as the stateless. Because it is considered as the stateless, so can I use the session-based mechanism? Because the REST architecture is considered as the stateless, so can I use the session-based mechanism? Answer is no, it is against the principle. It is against the principle. Unique addressability, definitely every resource is identified by the unique URL. Same URL you can use for 4-5 types of request. Map response to HTTP methods. Media type presentation is there. Into your DIY category, if you had additional time, even after construct week, try to learn about the HETIOs. This is exceptionally well principle of the Spring Boot. Actually, this is the principle of REST API, HETIOs. I will provide you that content also. I will provide you that content also. So everyone, overall, why not to use the session-based login? I hope this is clear for you. Why not to use the session-based login? I hope this is clear for you. This is not according to the principle of the REST architecture. So this time, everyone, when you are going to develop an application, then these are the 3 dependencies that actually you have to add. First dependency is Java JWT API, that is JJWT API, JJWT IMPL, and JJWT Jackson. These are the implementation these are the things that you have to first add as a dependency. Next part that you have to do is, everywhere you have to actually disable the session. And to disable the session, what you need to do, go to the app config. Into the app config, go to the any method name that is actually accepting the HTTP security. Into the HTTP security, for the session management, you have to define the session creation policy as the stateless. Now what will happen? No cookie will be generated. So can I say that very first task is to disable the session whenever we are talking about the REST API? Whenever we are, okay. Then everyone, remaining course configuration, you have to write down, because if I'm talking about the REST API, then the consumer and the producer, they will be from the different origin. Yes or no? In case of REST API, the producer and the consumer, they will be on the different server. So definitely they are on the different origin. If they are available on the different origin, then definitely we have to write down the course configuration also. Just copy and paste, no problem. Just copy and paste, no problem. Then everybody, I need to write down the JWT token generator filter. Any key you can write down. This is the random sequence. You can write down any. But if I'm talking about the name of the header, then keep in mind name of the header is going to be authorization. Same as for the basic authentication. Then token generator is available here. Into the token generator, actually what we are doing, we are actually extending the once plus filter class. There is method available that is called the do filter internal filter method. And in this method, you have to use the APIs, everyone. Please follow the instructions. I am almost running out of time, so definitely taking the example is not possible. But once if you are comfortable, what dependencies to be add, why not to use the session-based authentication, then please follow this document one by one. You will be able to implement the JWT authentication. One more thing that please you should do. Many of the time it happens that when we are evaluating, the secret key for all the user is same. When secret key for all the scholars is same, so do I need to tell anything or you understand? Remaining part, please actually do it yourself. Right now, you are requested to go to the LMS platform and please fill the feedback form of the class. This is last class for this session. I wish all the best for your future. Go to the revision batch, perform well, go to the placement, and I wish that out of 3 to 5 opportunities, you will be able to make. But if somebody is going for the 10 opportunity, it is not a crime. The late you are getting the job, definitely the more practicing time you are spending, and it is ultimately going to give you advantage in the long run. Okay, everyone, that's all for the day. So stopping the recording.